Hi everyone, it's April from Tabby. Today's video is extra special because I'm interviewing someone I know very well, my husband Nathan. He is a native English speaker and a scientist who works with a lot of non-native English speakers from all around the world. So I wanted to ask him some questions that non-native English speakers are secretly curious about, like what do native speakers really think when someone makes grammar mistake. So if you ever felt nervous about your English, this video is for you. So let's jump in. Hi.
Hello,
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Great. First of all, thank you for joining me in this video. Could you introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure, my name is Nathan Hilson. I'm a scientist. I don't know what other type of background you want me to give.
I think that's good enough. The background of this video is that I wanted to know what native speakers really feel about when non-native speakers make English mistake. And I got used to talk to you with my broken English for so long, so normally I don't even nervous or aware of my mistake. But I'm sure there are tons of other people, and including myself. Sometimes I worry about how my English sounds when I meet a stranger, like new people. So, but before we going there, let me ask you a few questions. Do you remember the first time we spoke?
Like actually like in person?
Yeah, like I wonder like how you felt, how you thought about my English.
I don't specifically remember anything about your English. I mean, what I remember was you were running late by just a few minutes, and you were sending me messages just to make sure that I knew that you were on your way and you're only a couple of minutes away. But I don't remember specifically like English language aspects.
Okay, so my English didn't surprise you or upset you at least. Okay, good to know. What's my funniest English mistake? Be honest.
Your funniest
Yes.
English mistake? I think some of it that is funny for me that I think about immediately is sometimes you have difficulty pronouncing Z's versus J's. So in English, there's the word zombie,
Oh, yeah.
and you would pronounce it more like zombie. So things like that are a little bit entertaining because you still understand what the meaning is, but the way that it sounds is just kind of not what you're expecting, and the difference between what you expect and what you understand it to mean can be funny sometimes. Or sometimes like if you instead of in English you might say Jesus, then sometimes you say more like Jesus.
Tried so many different like pronunciation app to correct my J sound, especially this Jesus, which I cannot pronounce still. I think I got this zombie. Did I correctly say
Say it again.
zombie?
That's pretty good. Yeah.
How about Jesus?
No, because it almost sounds like you're doing a J sound twice in that particular case, like Jesus instead of Jesus.
Jesus.
Yeah. So those things can be funny.
Okay.
It's mostly, I mean, but what comes to mind most immediately is just the sound of kind of syllables as opposed to like using a word, incorrectly or something like that. It's mostly just the sound.
Okay. So my first question. So what do you think about like when a non-native speaker makes mistake, grammar mistake?
So I think as long as you feel like you understand what's being intended to be said, then it really doesn't bother me. I mean, I work, as a scientist, it's a big international community, and I work with people with all kinds of different first languages and different different backgrounds in different languages will make certain types of patterns that aren't necessarily like what a native English speaker would do, but you can map those pretty easily into like what they're intended to be saying. So in those cases, it doesn't bother me. It's almost like there's a background process in my head that is just remapping what the person is saying into what they intended to say. I think there are certain, I think some of the issues that you run into that might be a little bit more concerning or bothersome is if they're using certain words that have connotations to an English speaker that aren't necessarily present to the person speaking it, who might be just translating in their head directly from their native language. Or vice versa, there can be problems when there's a connotation in the native language that they're thinking in that isn't present in the English word, and that can cause problems too. So I think sometimes it isn't necessarily the direct communication of the word, it's just there's these secondary connotations, and those can lead to kind of misunderstandings, and those can actually be, at least in my experience, more problematic.
Here somebody makes mistake, do you recognize every single like word? Like for example, if I listen to Korean and there's a mistake, I will recognize that, and I think I will be bothered. But is it like you are saying that it's okay? Is it because you want to be polite and you got used to my broken English for over 5 years now? You kind of trained your ears, but even from the beginning, you didn't get bothered with those mistakes?
I don't think it bothers me. Again, like if the focus is on the intention or what is trying to be communicated, it's not an issue. Again, like I was saying, like I might have like an unconscious or subconscious language processing step that just I don't even have to think about it consciously. Like I'm just trying to understand what you're saying, or what, if somebody was from a different country, then it'd be something similar. So if I'm not being attentive, like I probably don't even notice those things because I'm focusing on the intention or the content as opposed to how they're saying it or what they're saying it. If you tell me to be attentive and you say, hey, I'm gonna read you a paragraph, or I'm gonna to talk for a minute, please pay attention and tell me like where I'm making mistakes. If you want me to be attentive, I can. But I normally don't. I don't normally try to be attentive to those things because at the end of the day, there's no purpose in me doing that. I mean, it doesn't help me. It doesn't help you unless you want to get feedback. Like, where am I making mistakes? I basically would not be attentive.
I feel like your answer, like because you got used to different accent, different mistakes, so you kind of filter or ignore those. I don't know if it's a personality or really you got used to, because for me it's still like some English accent and it's harder for me to understand. Not only just harder, but it's unpleasant. But you are saying you don't feel like unpleasant.
No.
Okay.
I think so the other thing that we need to point out is that spoken versus written is very different. Like listening to somebody talking, I have that subconscious, unconscious like filtration step where I focus on the intention. It's much more difficult for me to not notice issues, like if the word "the" is missing, or the word "the" is where it's not supposed to be, or if there's more grammatical things, especially like if I'm working on a document with someone else collaboratively. That often happens in science where you together as a team you try to write things. Then those things can become a little bit more bothersome, especially if you know that the target audience for this would be like native English speakers, or just generally you're supposed to be writing things in the proper way. Then that can be much more frustrating, because even though you can understand what the intention was of somebody writing those things, it just feels unsmooth, like unpolished, like rough. So I think spoken versus written is a difference. It also probably depends on the particular context. Like if you're giving like a public presentation in a scientific conference where there's like hundreds of people listening, and it's like one of your team members that's speaking and they're having grammatical mistakes, or in those contexts you're probably being a little bit more attentive, or a little bit more sensitive to those types of things, because again, it's like a more formal thing. It's not just trying to communicate a day-to-day thing. When it's in a more formal context, then it probably matters more and you notice more.
So when you see like paper kind of co-work on the paper, do you try to help them or just ignore?
Well, I correct it, I fix it. In those particular situations, I mean, I'm probably not trying to like coach them in how to write English better. Do their best first shot, and then I'll go back and fix it.
Do they ask, or you're supposed to do that?
Well, I'm one of the authors, so like if anybody's reading it, like they know that I should have like read over it and fixed it. I'm not doing my job if I'm not fixing those types of things. And it can be a little bit frustrating, but I mean, that's just, comes with the territory. But I'm not trying to, coach them or teach them on how to write English better. I mean, I guess it's a cost-benefit analysis, like how much time am I going to invest with them to improve their English versus me just fixing it. There might be things that they're just not aware of, that there's a connotation associated with it. Those things I'll point out. But like if they're writing things and they include an extra "the" or they're missing a "the," like I'm not gonna to give them like a grammatical lesson. I'm just gonna fix it.
From the other point of view, other side, like I would be afraid that I make mistake. I mean, it's maybe before AI. Now AI fix a lot of things. But then when I share my portion of work, even like MBA homework, I'm doing with native speakers. I know that there must be English mistake, and is it kind of expected the native speaker counterpart will correct? And do you feel like pressure to do that, or you just naturally do that? It's just kind of a flow that you just do it.
Oh, I think I'm expected and I have to do it. I wouldn't put it like being natural or unnatural. I mean, that's just part of the job. I don't think that kind of, non-native English speaker colleagues that are writing, they're not going to be like, they're not going to take it personally, or they're not going to be sensitive to English mistakes that they're making. They would be much more sensitive to like if they like scientifically or technically made a mistake. So I don't think the English is the issue. I think they want to communicate as long as they can get across what they did. If they made some grammatical mistakes, that's not going to be a problem.
When you listen to a non-native speaker talk in English, do you notice like that there's a grammar mistake versus the accent? Which matter more? Like if someone non-native speaker should focus, is it accent or grammar mistake?
I would probably say that I would notice accent things more than grammar. So it's like, for example, we already talked about pronouncing Z's versus J's. English has appropriated lots of foreign languages, French, German. Korean has appropriated a lot of English words. And I think when Koreans are speaking English, oftentimes they'll use the pronunciation that's getting used in Korean. Like it's the same word, but it has a different pronunciation in native English versus like the Korean version of the English word. Those things are very noticeable, because it's different than what you expected. It's not wrong in a certain way, like a grammar error, like leaving out "the" or getting the gender wrong or something like that. I think that's less noticeable to me than kind of like the pronunciation, types of things.
Less noticeable mean that those non-native speakers should focus more on to improve?
And this is just my perspective. Like I wouldn't say like that I am representative of all native English speakers and this is the way that they would respond to things. Mm-hmm. But I think the pronunciation, I guess you're calling it accent. But the pronunciation differences, I think, are things that I probably notice a bit more than the grammatical things.
So I know it's still your own personal opinion, but you would recommend the person should work on more on pronunciation, accent, fluency than try to be perfect with grammar.
So it kind of depends on what the objective is, right? If what you're trying to do is just get your point across, get the communication across, and pronunciation, as long as that the person actually recognizes the word, that really doesn't make any difference. So because the person's still going to understand what you're saying. They're pronouncing it a little bit weird. Sometimes if you get too far off, then you don't really understand what the person is saying. And I think people that aren't used to non-native English speaker accents, like haven't had the mapping, like they probably have a much more like specific and narrow like tolerance of like what a word is supposed to talk or supposed to sound like. And if you're around a lot of non-native English speakers, you probably have a much bigger tolerance for like what is acceptable for that word. But there can be certain like two different words in English can sound pretty similar but means pretty different things. So when a non-native English speaker makes a pronunciation issue where you actually convey the wrong meaning because you said the word in slightly that can be an issue. But again, like as long as you're just trying to get your point across, then I think a lot of these accent pronunciations, as long as you're close enough, the person understands what you're saying, it's not an issue. But if you want to get to the point where you wouldn't even trigger the native English speaker to notice anything, then that's a different objective. So I would say like the answer to your question really depends on the objective of the person that you're talking about.
So the situation like in Bay Area, there's so many non-native English speakers using different accent, but still they are like in a big company working. What do you think the English, like what level, like that I talked to my friend like Dan, you know him too, like he said that he believed that you have to work on perfecting your English, either grammar or accent. It takes a lot of time, effort. Employees, like colleagues, rather focus on their work because that matter more than English. Of course, you have to be able to communicate, but instead of perfecting like 80% to 100, those employees, like he was working for a big company like Google, rather focus on the work and the expertise. What do you think about that comment?
So again, I would kind of go back to the context. Like there's going to be very little tolerance for those types of mistakes, like if you're presenting to 200 people. Or if for example, like you were the only author on a paper and you write something and you have those mistakes in it, that would not be good. I think if you're working in a team and you can rely on native English speakers to fix minor things, or if it's just kind of like, you know, within the team, you know, type of day-to-day, you know, operations, then some of those things don't really matter. And I agree that if people are spending hours and hours trying to make sure that they say something exactly right instead of just doing the work, that's probably not a good return on investment. So again, it depends on the context, but I would agree with you in a scientific, technical, you know, perspective. What people are getting judged by are their ideas and their work. It's not on the English, with the exception of like public presentations or written materials for publication.
Including heavy users, now like AI can help tremendously for non-native speakers writing, and we rely on those tools. So maybe on paper or email it sounds perfect, but then I also see maybe there's some issue, because when you get to talk to them in person, the gap they're writing, you have an impression from their writing versus their talking, it's a big gap. And other issue maybe is that it doesn't sound like them anymore.
So I would probably say this is more of the case in like a personal context as opposed to a professional work context. But I think I understand that the value of AI tools for non-native English speakers, especially if you're getting anxious around making grammatical mistakes or, you know, word choice, or maybe even things like connotations. And if you're spending, you know, tons and tons of time, like, you know, writing an email or things, that's not really a good use of your time, and the AI tools can be tremendously valuable for that. And they can also be very useful for kind of giving you some very quick feedback, like on what you're saying and why you might want to do something a little bit differently. I think as a native English speaker, at least for me, what gets a little bit irritating is something that I think that you said, you know, maybe at the end of your question. If you read something and it objectively, not even subjectively, but it objectively does not sound like the person.
Are you talking about my card for you?
So yeah, for example, like if you're going to be doing like personal things, like if you're going to be giving somebody like a holiday card or a birthday card or a thank you card, something that's supposed to have a personal touch. I mean, normally people would think that, hey, if it's handwritten, that has a lot of personal touch to it. But if the person used an AI tool to generate the content that then they just transcribe with their hands and it doesn't sound like them, they didn't use words that they would normally use, if it sounds like it's an AI tool, then I think that can be very disappointing.
So I have a really like specific question then here, because I use AI tool to write all those cards, but it's still my message. I compose a message, still include what I wanted to write about you, for example, or real thing that we did together. Just the sentence itself is maybe a little bit off from my own sentence I would be able to generate. Do you mean that? Or
so I don't mean like minor differences or like sentence structure changes. That's not what I'm talking about. It's like word choice.
Okay.
Like there's expressions that the AI will give back, just is not something like you would use. Like you don't use the word vibe when you're talking, but AI will certainly use it.
Not talking about writing, I use Vibe. I think I did for Instagram post.
So, but I don't know if that came from AI or that came from you. So I think that's an issue, and I think it's really only an issue when you're doing things that are supposed to have a personal touch.
So even if it's like I went to bed, but then maybe the AI kind of switch my English to more native speaker, like with using more expression, the idiom and stuff. But you prefer my very simple, plain language?
In a personal note or a card, I would like it to sound like you wrote it, not that it was redrafted from you with like idiomatic expressions that you're not even familiar with.
Okay. How about mistake part? You rather have the message with the mistake, but it's created from me, not get the AI help?
I think if it has grammatical mistakes, that's almost evidence that you weren't using an AI tool. So again, it seems more personal. This might be very different, like in a professional context, where it's much more important not to make mistakes than to kind of maintain your own voice. So again, it's going to be context, dependent. But what I'm just, in response to your question, when do these tools, maybe cause some issues? I think on the more personal side, that's when these things can come into play. Like if you're drafting an email to your doctor, they just want to get the information across, right? That's great.
How about my earlier question? Because you maybe communicate with your colleague mostly through email, and then maybe once in a quarter or once in a month, then you meet somebody on like video call or in person, then you notice there is a big gap that your idea of this person's communication level, like at least English level, is different from like speaking level. Do you have that experience?
Well, I mean, I think the writing process is very different than the speaking process. When you're writing, you can go back and go over it. You can correct mistakes. When you're speaking, it's real time. You don't really do that. So I don't think there's the expectation that your speaking is going to be as accurate or precise as your written, just because you have more time. I mean, one example for me, and I try to speak other languages too, not just English. But if I'm going to be writing in Spanish, I can probably do a much better job than if I'm just speaking back in real time. Maybe I forget a word, or maybe just to make sure I get the sentence out, I might make mistakes. So I think it's the way that my written Spanish might look would be a lot better than my spoken Spanish. So I think, I get that. So I don't have expectations that your English is going to sound when you speak exactly as the way that you write it.
But then now the gap is even bigger, Because if you already notice, oh yeah, this name, even though April Kim, maybe Korean, maybe Korean American, and then used to have a perfect English in written English communication, and then you meet someone, oh, she actually is not a native English speaker because you didn't even know, because before it was all written by AI. But doesn't surprise you?
That wouldn't surprise me. I mean, or it wouldn't surprise me, and it probably wouldn't bother me, because it's not really going to affect the. If this is in a work context, it's not going to affect the work. The issue is, like, again, going back to what I talked about before. It depends on context, right? So if you're kind of considering, you know, the consequences of how they speak English, you might think, oh, if this person is going to have to give a presentation at this really big conference, this is going to be difficult for us. Or if I'm going to be writing a paper with this person, I mean, maybe you just said that, you know, they're using AI tools to fix some of these things, but if I'm writing a paper with them, like, this is going to require a lot of effort. Like, for example, I know I've had, you know, non-native English speakers on my team, and they'll put it in a first draft, and I just know ahead of time, hey, this is going to be long and frustrating for me to go and fix every little mistake. Maybe those types of things will get better using AI based tools, but I think you just kind of anticipate that is going to be something that you're going to have to pay for in the future, even though most day-to-day things it's not really going to.
Now I come back to more like personal question and different angle. So have you seen me different April, and I'm the only, maybe one of few non-native English speaker, or do you see me kind of myself even with that, in that setting? Have you noticed anything change?
I think the challenge that you have in group settings is that you don't feel like in real time you can ask for somebody to explain to you something that you missed. So often, like, if we're in a group setting, you'll come up to me hours later and say, hey, I didn't understand, you know, what they were talking about, explain it to me. So I think that's one issue, and I think you also tend, in a one-on-one setting, you tend to be much kind of like, verbose is the wrong word, and shy isn't what I would probably describe you in group settings, but you don't tend to be as outspoken in group settings as you are like one-on-one. So there's definite differences of you between group settings and being more like you know, just two people.
So yeah, definitely that's the situation, because in a group setting, I don't want to slow down the conversation because of me, either because of my English listening issue, or I don't know the context or cultural reference, so I don't want to stop. The people like me, what do you have any advice? Is it just natural way, or do you encourage me to, even in that situation, I should try to participate more in the conversation?
I think participating more would be good. I think people are going to have a very high tolerance, and they're going to be happy that you at least try to engage. Or sometimes they'll think it's funny, like if everybody except for you gets like a cultural reference and you ask what that is. I mean, maybe a lot of these people are using the reference subconsciously and they haven't even really thought about it. And maybe that'll be fun for them to actually do that. So I think a little bit more engagement would be a good thing. And then the other things is that, you know, over time you learn. So I mean, you are going to learn more about the references as time goes on, and all these types of things. But I think being a little bit more engaged and active would be a good thing.
Okay. I will try.
Yeah.
Okay, so my last question. So anything you want to say to Tabby user who want to improve their language skill, but afraid of speaking and writing because of mistake, but they want to improve, they want to be confident. So any feedback, suggestion for them, for me?
So I again, like, I probably wouldn't say it's like a one size fits all thing. If you're writing or speaking on a very kind of like personal note or message, it's actually might even be endearing to make mistakes and to make it sound like you, whether or not there's mistakes or not, than trying to make it polished. it also will just depend on like what your objective is. If you're just trying to communicate, something, then I think as long as the other person can understand what you're saying, there's going to be a high tolerance for those types of mistakes. But if you're giving a public speech or you're writing, something that's somewhat formal, then it's a much, bigger thing. But I would hope that most people would let go of some of their anxiety as like just a basic thing. But also, there are all these tools that can help you. So if you are going to be anxious no matter what, and you no matter if I'm telling you don't be anxious and you're still going to be anxious, then if the tools can help you more quickly do things and feel less anxious about your mistakes, then definitely use the tools. I would also say that ideally you want to be learning as you go, as opposed to just never getting better yourself and always just relying on the tools. You don't have to get perfect immediately, but I think also use the tools as an opportunity to get direct feedback on the types of things that you might not be doing in a standard way, so that you can just kind of do that in a more natural.
Okay. Well, the fact that you married to me and then you're fine with my all those broken English and accent, that means that as long as you can communicate, maybe it's not something you're so much afraid of. So that's encouragement. Okay. So my last question. Rate my English 1 to 10.
So 1 to 10. I would probably say you're probably like around a 7 or an 8, and that has a lot in it. Not just your pronunciation or your accent or your grammar, but idiomatic things, cultural references, your ability not only one-on-one but in group settings. So that's why you don't get a 10 out of 10. But it's not just like one single category. It's all of those things.
Like in 10 years, my English will get at least improved like 8 or 9 or something.
You could move up a half a point, something like that. Maybe more. I think I'm probably not even a 10. So I don't think that getting to 10 is really the objective. But cultural references or connotations or saying zombie correctly, those are all signs that you're getting better.
Okay. Thank you for your time and sharing all your honest feedback, honest thought about all those questions I asked. So yeah, again, thank you, and I hope I can make a good video out of this.
Okay,
back to myself. Yeah, well, I'm still a little bit nervous. I never felt so nervous in front of my husband, even from my first date. And it was a good opportunity to ask him questions related to English. So hopefully the conversation and some insight or some feedback helpful for you too. And if you want to have more of this video, then please subscribe and like and comment. Okay, so have a great day. Bye.